On June 25th, 2009, the world stopped. News stations interrupted their programs. Crowds gathered outside hospitals. Millions of people rushed to their televisions and phones. The king of pop was dead. For many people, Michael Jackson was the greatest entertainer who ever lived. A man who sold hundreds of millions of records, broke racial barriers, and changed music forever. But behind the fame, the records, and the moonwalk was a man who spent almost his entire life chasing something most people take for granted: a normal life. Michael Jackson once said, "I never had a childhood." And maybe that one sentence explains everything. Because from the age of 5, Michael wasn't just a child. He was a product, a superstar, a phenomenon, a target, a mystery, and in many ways a prisoner of his own fame. This is the story of why Michael Jackson never had a normal life, and why the most famous man in the world may also have been one of the loneliest. Before he became Michael Jackson, he was simply Michael Joseph Jackson. He was born on August 29th, 1958, in Gary, Indiana. The Jackson family lived in a small 2-bedroom house. There were 9 children, money was tight, privacy didn't exist, and life was difficult. Michael's father, Joe Jackson, believed that poverty was the enemy. He was determined that his children would escape it. When he noticed that his sons had musical talent, he formed a group, the Jackson 5. At first, it looked like a dream, but for Michael, it became something very different. The rehearsals were brutal. Mistakes were punished. Hours of practice became days. Days became years. While other children played outside, Michael was learning dance routines and singing harmonies. By the age of 5, his childhood had already been replaced by work. Later in life, Michael would describe feeling terrified of his father. He said he often became physically sick whenever Joe entered the room. Whether all the details can ever be fully known, one thing is clear. Michael's relationship with his father shaped him forever. He grew up believing love had to be earned through perfection, and perfection would become his obsession. The Jackson 5 became an overnight sensation. Suddenly, the little boy from Gary was appearing on television. Crowds screamed his name. Girls fainted. The money started coming in. But something else disappeared. Normality. Michael couldn't go to school like other children. He couldn't make friends normally. He couldn't ride bicycles through the neighborhood. He couldn't go to birthday parties. Instead, he spent his days in recording studios, hotels, airplanes, and concert arenas. At night, he would look through hotel windows and watch other children playing outside. He wanted what they had, a childhood, but he could never have it. Years later, Michael admitted that he often cried because he felt alone. The world saw a superstar. He saw a little boy who had been left behind. By the early 1980s, Michael Jackson was already famous. Then came Thriller, and everything changed. Thriller didn't just become an album, it became a global event. The album sold more copies than almost any record in history. Michael became bigger than any musician alive. He couldn't walk down the street. He couldn't enter a store. He couldn't eat in a restaurant. Wherever he went, chaos followed. Fans screamed. People chased his car. Hotels were surrounded. Airports shut down. Imagine being unable to do even the simplest things. Imagine never being able to buy groceries. Imagine never sitting in a park. Imagine never knowing if someone likes you for who you are or because you're famous. Michael once said, "Fame is lonely." And perhaps nobody understood that loneliness better than he did. As he got older, Michael's appearance began to change. The rumors exploded. Plastic surgery, skin bleaching, strange behavior. The media became obsessed with his face. But the truth was more complicated. Michael suffered from vitiligo, a condition that causes patches of skin to lose pigment. He also suffered from lupus. The physical changes made him deeply insecure. Friends described him as someone who constantly worried about his appearance. He rarely felt comfortable in his own skin. The little boy who had once been criticized and pushed toward perfection had become a man who could never stop trying to perfect himself. No matter how successful he became, he never seemed completely happy with who he saw in the mirror. In the late 1980s, Michael built Neverland Ranch. To many people, it seemed bizarre. An amusement park, a zoo, carnival rides, movie theaters. But for Michael, Neverland represented something else entirely. It was an attempt to recreate the childhood he never had. He wanted a place where imagination could exist forever, a place where children laughed, a place where innocence survived. In many ways, Neverland wasn't built for children. It was built for the child inside Michael Jackson, the little boy from Gary who never got the chance to grow up normally. Then came the scandals, the accusations, the investigations, the headlines. Suddenly, Michael Jackson became one of the most controversial people on earth. For years, every movement he made became front-page news. The media followed him relentlessly. Jokes were made. Rumors spread. Conspiracy theories exploded. Whether people defended him or condemned him, one thing became undeniable. Michael Jackson could no longer escape public judgment. He became less of a person and more of an idea, a symbol, a mystery, a headline. And every headline pushed him further away from normal life. Michael was a perfectionist. Every note, every dance move, every performance. Nothing was ever good enough. He rehearsed endlessly, worked constantly, pushed himself beyond exhaustion. Friends often worried about him. They saw someone carrying an enormous weight. The pressure to remain Michael Jackson was almost impossible. How do you live when the world expects you to be a legend every day? How do you relax when millions are watching? How do you become ordinary when you've spent your entire life being extraordinary? The answer is you don't. In his final years, Michael appeared increasingly isolated. He trusted very few people. He struggled with enormous pressures, financial problems mounted, his health suffered, yet he was preparing for one final comeback. This is it. 50 concerts, a chance to remind the world who he was. But the pressure was immense. The rehearsals were exhausting. The expectations were enormous. On June 25, 2009, before the first concert could happen, Michael Jackson died at the age of 50. The man who spent his entire life performing for the world died alone in his bedroom. Within hours, millions of people mourned him. Fans gathered across the globe. Candles were lit. Music filled the streets. The world had lost its greatest entertainer. But perhaps something even sadder had happened. A little boy who never got to be a child had finally reached the end of a life that was never normal from the very beginning. Michael Jackson achieved almost everything a person could dream of. Fame, money, success, records, adoration. But the one thing he seemed to want most remained out of reach, a normal life. Maybe that's why his story continues to fascinate people. Because behind the glittering glove and the moonwalk was someone deeply human, someone searching for acceptance, someone searching for peace, someone searching for the childhood he never had. And perhaps the greatest tragedy of Michael Jackson's life isn't how famous he became. It's that from the age of 5, he stopped being an ordinary little boy, and he never truly got the chance to become one again. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to History Revisited, where we uncover the lives, mysteries, and untold truths hidden behind the world's most famous names.